Hi, welcome to this week's Dragonblade Authors Unplugged. We've got a full house. We were supposed to have a fuller house. We were supposed to have Jenna with us, but we will catch up with Jenna Jaxon on another week. She wasn't able to work out the technical stuff, but we do have Elizabeth Donne, C.H. Admirand, Cerise DeLand, and Tanya Wilde with us this week. Ladies, thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Good to be here.
I really appreciate it. And we've got stories for everybody this week, from Dragonblade Originals the whole way through to Sweet Dreams. Beginning series, ending series, all that kind of stuff is great.
Yeah.
So let's start in release order. And we're going to go with the book that released first this week, which is CH's book. And it's The Duke's Lance. And it is book 12 in the Duke's Guard. This guy has got a big guard. It's book 12 in the Duke's Guard. Can you tell us about this one?
Yes, because I wrote it down today. Don't laugh because, my schedule is a little crazy. I'm writing 2 books at one time at the moment and talking about a book that got sent in like a couple months ago. So The Duke's Lance is about the youngest and the last of the O'Malleys. There were 8 O'Malleys in this series, and he's the youngest, Eamon. His fraternal twin is Thomas, who was the Duke's rapier, which was book 10. But anyway, it's yep, and there you go. It's gone. And I wrote it down. Okay, wait. I'll tell you what I wrote because I'm having brain fade. Please don't laugh at me. It's a marriage of convenience, and
it's a deal. I love those.
It's a super protective hero. They actually meet each other in book 6 in Aidan Garahan's story, The Duke's Defender. Mm-hmm. And he sees her when she's stepping off the carriage, and he sees that she has an identical bruise to Emily Montrose, who ends up marrying Aidan. That's in book 6. But it's obvious to him that they're abused, and his protective instincts just snap on. He wants to know what's going on. Who did this? I'm gonna go, whoop, what, and take names. And so finally their story comes around, and she's not comfortable because staying on at the Duke's estate, because she was a lady's maid and she's no longer needed. So she decides that, it's time for her to look elsewhere, but they really don't want her to leave. And she's saying, well, who would marry me? I mean, nobody here, who would marry me? And of course he's coming up behind her in his deep voice. He's like, that would be me, lass. I'll marry you. And she's like, no, I hardly know you, but he really wants to be protective of her. So she leaves. But then he has to go off, and there's rescues involved. He ends up rescuing her twice. I think it was twice. There's mayhem, and
the first time instead of getting in trouble twice.
Well, some people just have that knack for getting into trouble. Usually it's something I say that gets me in trouble, but it was her actions and whatever. But stuff happens. Boy meets girl, stuff happens, more stuff happens, and then God only knows, because I'm already 3 books past that one. So I wish I could just tell you, but sorry.
Super protective hero, marriage of convenience. There's a lot to love there. Yeah.
Hopefully. And the truth, never mind. I was going to try to remember that nice snappy little line from my graphic, but that's gone too. So, Evelyn, I'm not going to be able to do these anymore. I'm going to be honest with you, because I have CRS and I'm really sorry.
You did just fine. And there are like 16 books in this series, right?
Yes. I only have
lots of Dukes. Lots of Dukes cards to look forward to. Well, I love a good marriage of convenience. That's one of my favorites. So I'm really excited about that. And we got Jenna back. Like all in this, Jenna back.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yay!
All right. So Jenna's book came out after CH's book, and it's The Dandelion, which we think is the coolest title ever. It's obviously a Lion's Den book. So Jenna, Can you tell us about this one?
Yes. The title was just kind of off the top of my head. I was staying with a friend of mine, a professor, and I said, I'm going to call it The Dandelion. And she laughed so hard. She thought that was the coolest thing, the funniest thing. And so because I knew it had to have lion, and his name is Dandridge, and he owns a gambling club called the Dandy, so it's like the
Oh,
Dandelion, of course.
yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, but that's how it got its name. But it was set up in the book before, my previous Lion's Den book, The Lion's Paw. And Jeffrey, who is the hero of that one, has a sister, Joanna. And the reason this book was written really was because I needed for him to have a reason to need to marry. And so enter Marcus Dandridge, who wants to marry his sister, Joanna, but Marcus is he's a tenant farmer's son who made a fortune in gambling clubs and has no social background. He's bettered himself, so he could pass for a gentleman, but he has no background. And so what he does is he tries to blackmail Jeffrey and buys up all of his land that he absolutely buys up all the mortgages and says, I'm going to call these in unless you let me marry your sister. And so that sends Jeffrey to the Lion's Den, and where he marries. And then he goes to Dandridge and says, stay away from my sister. But Dandridge isn't going to do that. So that's this book where, because he just, I mean, and you find this out pretty early on, he saw Joanna at a garden party and just fell immediately in love with her. Never met her, didn't meet her for at least a year, but he just fell in love with her, and that was the only woman for him. And so he went about it in not the best way possible, because now Jeffrey doesn't want him having anything to do with his sister and makes that very clear. And Marcus is like, well, you can make it as clear as you want, but that's not going to deter me. So the book,
Nice.
their book opens, the Dandelion opens, basically with him finagling an invitation to Lady Hamilton's ball, where he knows that Joanna is going to go for the first ball of her season. And then once he gets there, he again finagles another gambler at his club by saying, I'll, forgive your debts if you go take Jeffrey into the card room and give me a chance to be with Joanna. And so the guy does it, it's like, oh yeah, sure, not a problem. And so he finally gets to actually meet her. He's introduced and they dance. And Joanna she is intrigued by him because he's different. She's kind of bored with all the men that she's met so far. And so he's different. And she's kind of intrigued. And so when Jeffrey comes and breaks it up, obviously, and takes her away, she's furious that she has to leave her first ball. And she's like, tell me what is going on. And so when he tells her about this, this guy, he hadn't told her before that this guy, blackmailed him basically for 20,000 pounds. And so she's to have nothing to do with him. And she's like, that might not happen. So she's intrigued enough with Marcus and not a little defiant against her brother. And so, and then Marcus goes to the Lion's Den, and Mrs. Dove Lion gives him an idea about the next way that he can try to woo Joanna.
That is not quite so scoundrelly, because we need a little bit of redemption for this original.
Well, it's still kind of, it's not above board either. She basically tells him, you need to become a patron to this particular charity because Jeffrey's best friend is married to this woman, and so he ingratiates himself with her, and she manages to invite him to a shooting party in August. And so that's how he gets to see Joanna again, and finally they get to be together for a little while and get to. But of course, Jeffrey comes back in. So there are lots and lots of complications.
The road to true love is never smooth.
Not for these two, definitely.
Yeah, that sounds like lots of fun.
I kind of stole part of the tagline, which is in love the odds may never be in your favor.
Mhm.
Mm.
Good.
So I kind of stole that from the Hunger Games, but
Yeah.
in these characters' cases, it's true.
Well, it sounds like he volunteered his tribute, so there we go.
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. Well, the next book that comes out this week is another like incredibly long series, and it's Cerise's book, and it's Lord Fournier's Shameless Princess.
Shameless.
Shameless
Princess.
She's a shameless princess. And
Yes.
this is book 4. Is that correct?
Yes, this is 4 out of 16. Hubba hubba.
Wow.
I'm trying to
Jeez.
catch up with you. So, yes, Lord Fournier is part of a cadre of spies who have been planted not only in Paris but all over the continent, beginning in 1802 during the Treaty of Amiens. And his specialty is unique in that he speaks French, speaks German, and has lived in many of these countries. And he is an English baron, but his mother was German aristocracy. So he went to das Universität of the Heidelberg, and he knows a lot of people who, fought duels as honor symbols. And so he knows the German aristocracy very well. And in 1804, he comes home one night to his house in Karlsruhe, which is the capital of Baden, which sits on the Rhine. So it's on the French border. And the Duke of Baden has been a rascal, and I have a story to tell you that personally affects my family about this particular Duke of Baden. He has signed a treaty with Napoleon that he will not only conscript his own men to fight in a German regiment for Napoleon, but he will tax his subjects. Well, a lot of the Germans know this, dukes and princes and whatever, and they, of course, realize that they have to flee Napoleon, because if you won't sign, you wind up in the dungeon. So our shameless princess has lived in England for a while. She was betrothed to a cousin of George III, and she refused to marry him because he was dyspeptic, among other things. And so she has lived her own way, and she too becomes a spy and goes to Paris and does some good work, and then finds she must flee. Well, she also discovers that she has to save her little brother and her 2 sisters from Napoleon's wrath. And the man to help her do it is the one who is an expert in ushering out these royals from Europe, from the continent. And so one night, as he climbs into his bathtub, this lady appears in his boudoir, and she says, "You must help me." And of course, he covers himself with a little napkin. And he says, "Okay." And this is actually the second time she has barged in on him.
You have to start locking the bathroom door,
Yeah, I know. It's but you got to be clean. So So anyway, she says, you have to help me. And I won't go into all of the real history of why he too must leave Karlsruhe. But she says to him, you must help me go to my principality and help me get the rest of my family. We have to flee. We have to go to Britain. And he says, you're on. So this is really action adventure. It's a road trip. It's escape. And it is a slow burn romance.
Oh, I love a slow burn.
And when they get to England, you would think that all would be well. However,
it's not though, right?
Yeah, no. However, it's not, because he has a scandalous past that he has to smooth over. And she, of course, has to reconcile with the royal family because she refused to marry their cousin, who was, among other things, dyspeptic. But I have to tell you briefly, the personal connection with this story.
Oh, definitely.
A few years ago, I started the genealogy of my family on Ancestry.com. And when I got to my great grandfather, who lived in this period, we were reading, I was with my niece, and I was reading the actual German. He listed his profession as Soldat, which auf Deutsch is soldier. He was conscripted by Napoleon to fight for Napoleon for approximately 3 years. And then, of course, the Germans all got together in any kind of weather and told Napoleon to, that they were going to unite against him. So 2 years ago, my husband and I went to Baden, and we sat in the church where my father's family, it's my maiden name, my father's family has records in this church since 1532.
Oh my gosh.
And it was a wonderful experience. So in this book, I take you to Karlsruhe, and I also take you to Heidelberg and a couple other cities. It has been my pleasure in this series to give you romances set in historical detail that is precise and, dare I say, almost true to the day.
Awesome.
I just recently did an edit of a Lion's book that's coming out, and I usually put the date and the location and sometimes the address when I create a chapter. And my editor said to me, you have only a month here. Usually you give us a date. So you need a date, Joanne. Joanne's my real name. we need a date. And I was like, oh God, so I had to go back and have a date. So that's in the future. But I hope everybody's going to read this for the wonderful romance and for the history that is precise. I'm getting great reviews about the weaving of the historical fact with the romance. So hope you're.
I love that so much. Those of us who are historically challenged, who didn't love history in school, to be able to fall in love with it in fiction and then realize that you all have done the work of researching it and I can actually trust it is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's like it's a wonderful journey that way. Awesome. And there are 16 books in this.
Yes, there are 16 of these.
We still have lots more and lots more places to go.
Oh yeah, we do. We're going lots of places.
Awesome. Well, the next book that came out this week is Elizabeth's book, and it's Elena's Secret, and it is book 2 in the Ladies of Monroe series, and it's part of the Sweet Dreams line.
Yes.
Is that right?
That's right.
Awesome. Can you tell us about
Everyone
that one?
wants their clothes on, but that doesn't mean there isn't lots of lusting and kissing and
Yeah, all the sizzle, just none of the steak, you know.
no, it's each book is a standalone book, but they happen chronologically and they are connected.
Mhm.
So we meet Lord Howell, who's the Viscount of Monroe, in book 1, where we see him as a rather hapless, unsuccessful suitor. And the reason for that is because when he was younger, he has 2 older sisters who bullied him relentlessly, and he had a stutter most of his youth. So he was very, very shy. And then about 2 years ago in the story, his father passes and he becomes the new Viscount of Monroe. And he's grown up delicious looking, of course. But he still has this mental state of having been bullied and being incredibly shy around girls because his sisters were the bullies. So even though he's got all the status and the power and the experience of being a Viscount, inside he's just a scared little boy.
Oh,
So he doesn't really want to marry any of the ladies of the ton in Monroe, because Monroe's kind of like, it's a fictitious town. It's like London of the North. So it's a big city, and lots of people who would qualify to marry him, but all of them just want his money and his status, and they don't really care about little scared boy inside of him. And because he's like that, they think he's very aloof and offish and aren't really interested in him anyway. So then he finds out about a young woman called Eleanor Trenton. And the reason why she comes to his attention is because even though her father is not nobility, he's a very wealthy merchant, and he's been training his daughter to be someone that he can marry well and add to his status. And hopefully make some business connections with, because he loves money more than anything else. And because his father is like that, Eleanor is horrified that she might have a marriage like that one day, where there's no real love, where the father rules the house with an iron fist. That's the last thing that she wants. So, of course, the father goes ahead and brokers an arrangement with the Viscount to have her marry him, because this sheltered, obedient young woman would be the perfect match for this shy Viscount, because she wouldn't say boo to him and he could just quietly be his shy self, and she could be her quiet, reserved self, and that'd be the perfect match. So it's a marriage of convenience for the Viscount, just as much of a coward to even meet her in case she says no to seeing him. And it's a marriage of huge inconvenience to her, who doesn't want to marry a stranger who's probably going to not treat her well because she hasn't met him. What does she know about it? So off she toodles to Monroe in a carriage, really expecting the worst, and her father hasn't really bothered to tell her much about her fiance, and there's a carriage accident, and she ends up on a very dark and stormy night alone in the forest.
Oh no.
Being carried down the river, in actual fact, because of the accident happening right next to the river.
Oh no.
And she ends up drenched and alone and finds a cabin in the woods where there is a gorgeous young man who just happens to be in the cabin in the middle of the woods that night. It's a Sweet Dreams book, so there's no hanky-panky, but they really wish there was. And the next day he helps her get to Monroe because he's a good sort. But now she's got a problem. She's met someone for the first time who's made her heart go pitter, pitter, patter. And now she has to marry a complete stranger who she doesn't know from a bar of soap, and he could be any kind of person. What does she know? So now she's got to either stick to her duty, which her father expects of her, or follow her heart and find out who this young man is. And meanwhile, back at the ranch, in Monroe, her cousin, who's just like her dad, has decided to do something to upset the Viscount, her fiance, because he's equally greedy for money. And so before she's even met him, the Viscount is upset with the family and takes it out on her. So there are 2 secrets in the story. The one secret that we know about is that Eleanor has spent the night alone with a stranger, all above board the Duke cares because that would have completely ruined her reputation. Nobody has proof that she's behaved herself. That's the secret we know about that she has to keep from everybody. And at the same time, Eleanor decides to take matters into her own hands because she's sick and tired of everyone running her life for her. And she does something that she doesn't tell anybody about, and it ruffles a whole bunch of feathers. And that's the other secret about halfway through the story, which I'm not going to tell you anything about because it's just
because we have to read and get to the
oh
secret.
no, it's easy. So it ends up being a bit of a comedy of errors without the comedy. Because she and the Viscount end up doing a whole bunch of things to try and negotiate this very awkward engagement without even having met each other. Oh, and the other thing is her father, being such a relentless, mercenary, money-grabbing kind of guy, wants this marriage sorted like now because he's got a new shipment coming in and he doesn't want to be dealing with this frivolous marriage romance stuff. So get married already. So they have about 10 days between meeting and marrying because the bands have been called already. To figure all this out, to figure out how they're going to make it work when clearly they have seemingly nothing in common. So yeah, that's of course. Oh, and don't forget, there's no guy coming into the story as well. I mean, we know that there's somebody else in the story as well, just to make her hug a bit of patter while she's dealing with a guy she hasn't even met yet that she's supposed to marry. So we have a lot of feelings, his insecurities, her insecurities, all the things they dream of and they're not sure the other person can provide them with, and a lot of stumbling over their own feet trying to make it work. It's easy.
Yeah, fun. Well, it sounds like so much fun. How many more of the ladies of Mona Road?
There's 3 more after this.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Well, that sounds like so much
fun.
fun.
It's a fun romp. It doesn't sound fun. It sounds very frustrating. But in the there's, like I say, comedy of errors. There's a lot of people who get in each other's way so that they can't really make things work. And if somebody thinks now it's going to work out, they finally figured it out. Something else happens. But I enjoyed writing it. It was a like I say, a fun romp between the seriousness of the situation and the way we get in our own way trying to make things work.
Very cool. Well, the last book that came out this week is Tanya's book, and it's just about a rake, and it's book 5 in The Ladies Who Dare. Is it book 5 in The Ladies Who Dare? Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I have lost count.
Well, you should know this.
Yeah. I'll wrap this up with a quickie. So it's Leonora and Dare's story. We have a spirited heiress and a scoundrel's rake, a cocky rake, and they are both diehard flirts. So, but we also have on both sides of the family various rakish influence. So we have her father having been a rake, but not doing the right thing. And she is a living, breathing consequence thereof. And then we have their side, whose father, he fell in love, did the right thing, and then fell back into rakish ways. So we have them navigating their story in what I hope to be an hilarious way, and just kind of seeing how the past or history, will history repeat itself? How will it repeat itself? Will they be able to kind of overcome this family things that troubled their kind of parents? So yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. I'm with CH. Like, I wrote this book a while ago, so I had to write down the names. Also, I got confused. I thought I was on another book tonight, actually.
And it's like, I think that's something that readers don't realize is how far like our production schedule isn't as long as some publishers, but you're writing and turning in your book a long time before it releases, because we have to go through, like the whole formatting, pre-order period, editing, all of the, all of the steps that go between here and there.
So I just hope the story is a breath of fresh air for the readers. And like book 5 in the series, it takes a break from the the betting book and all the the subplot that's kind of trickling throughout the series. This is just a break, a fun break, I hope, and then it's on to the next book.
Sounds like it. And how many do we have in this series?
We have 7 books. But it's
Say with confidence, baby. Say it like you know.
No, because the last book is book 6, but there's 7 books. The first book is becoming the last book. It's kind of a situation like that. Yes. So
Okay.
yeah, the first book was pre-published. So it's now unpublished, and Dragonblade took it over. It's kind of so that's how that. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Well, awesome. Well, somewhere along the way we lost CH. But I really do appreciate you ladies taking the time to talk to us this week and share your releases. It's always so much fun for me to hear about your books, and I know it's fun for our readers to hear about your books. I'm going to say the same thing I say every week, which is that Dragonblade books are the very best deal on pre-order and release. So you want to grab them right away. If you don't get them on pre-order, you can always read them in Kindle Unlimited. But honest to goodness, it's less of an investment than a bad cup of coffee. So jump on it, people. All right, ladies, thanks so much for taking the time. I'll put the links to everybody's books. Jenna, I'm so glad you made it in.
Yes,
And in the comments if you haven't gotten them, so you can grab them now. Thanks so much, ladies.
Thank you.